Hello everyone, this is Syntax Error and welcome back to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the airstrike bow. And first of all, I'd like to mention that there are indeed timestamps down below in the description, so you can go ahead and skip to whichever section you want to skip to. Now, let's go ahead and first of all, take a look at what the item actually does. So if we go ahead and just type in the command /give airstrike bow, it will give us this bow. And if we just go ahead and summon a rabbit, we are not going to spawn in ravagers this time because they have too much health. So we're just going to spawn in a few of them and we are going to shoot at the random location here. So there's this like title screen here warning us, and yeah, strike just comes down. So let's just go ahead and just do that again, and hopefully the server doesn't keep lagging. There we go. And the airstrike will come down. It will come down and explode. Yep, so that's the item, and let's get straight into the coding then. Alright, for the coding part, we are back in our custom items plugin, and the first thing that we can go ahead and do is create a new Java class, and we're just going to name this item manager. So this is where we are going to be creating the design of the item. Now, first of all, we're going to create our item stack first. So public static item stack, and we're just going to name this airstrike bow for simplicity purposes. And then we're going to create a public static void, and we're just going to name this init, which stands for initialization, and we're just going to leave it as it is for the time being. Now we're also going to create a private static void, and we are just going to name this create airstrike bow. And within it, we are going to create another item stack. So item stack item equals to a new item stack, and in the brackets we are going to put the material of the item, which in this case would be material.bow, and we are going to put a comma and put the amount as 1. Then we are going to get the item meta of the item, so we're going to type item meta equals to item.get item meta. Then we are going to set the display name of our airstrike bow, so we're going to type meta.set display name, and in the brackets we're going to put our speech marks, and we're going to go into this website and get one of these color code symbols. The link to this website will be down below in the description. We can go ahead and just paste the symbol right there and put a 6 next to it, which stands for gold in color, and we can just type the name of the item, which in this case would be airstrike bow. And then we can go ahead and move on with the lore now. So for the lore, it's slightly different. We have to create a list. So we're going to type list, and within our angle brackets, we are going to put string, and we're just going to name it lore equals to a new array list. And then we are going to add lines of lore. So lore.add bracketed, put our speech marks, paste in the color code again, put a 6 for gold in color, item ability, colon, airstrike. We are just going to name the item ability airstrike, and my spelling is not good. And we are just going to name add in another line of lore, paste in the color code symbol again. This time we are going to put a 7 for gray in color, and then we are just going to, that's not how we spell calls. And then we are going to type calls a decent airstrike, and we are going to move down to another line of lore just to make things slightly easier for the player to see. Put in the 7 again for gray color where the arrow lands. Then we have to remember the most important full stop and put our semicolon. Then now all we have to do is just type meta.set lore as our lore, and then item.set item meta as our meta, and finally our airstrike bow equals to our item. And after all of this, we can just head back into our init method, and we can go ahead and just type create airstrike bow. And now the last step for our design of the item would be to go back into our main class and just type item manager dot init. And with that, we are done with the design of the item. Now we can move on with the item commands. So for the item commands, we can just go ahead and create another new Java class, and this time we're just going to name it commands this time, just for simplicity purposes again. And as usual, we can implement command executor. And first of all, we are going to create a public boolean, and we are going to call this on command. And in the brackets, we're going to type command sender comma, command, cmd, comma, string label, comma, and finally string square brackets rx. Then after that, first of all, we're going to check if the sender of the command is a player. So if sender instance of player, then we are going to move outside of the if statement to create an else statement, which represents if the sender is not a player. So if they are not a player, we are going to send them a message. So sender.send message. In our brackets, put in our speech marks again. Only players can use that command. And full stop. And we return true. Now we can move back into our if statement that we created earlier and just type player equals to bracketed player sender. So we're just going to convert the sender into a player, and we are going to check if the player is opt. So if player dot is opt, then we are also going to move outside of our if statement to create another else statement. So if the player is not opt, we are going to send them another message. So player dot send message, you are not allowed to use this command. To make it as intimidating as possible, let's just spam exclamation marks, and let's get out of this, both the if statement and the else statement, and return true. Now we can hop back into our if statement again and compare the command that the player sent. So if cmd.getName.equals ignore case. Now we're going to put our speech marks in the bracket again, and over here we are going to type the command that we want to listen to. So, which in this case would be give airstrike bow. Then, if the player type give airstrike bow or slash give airstrike bow, you're going to give them the item. So, player.getInventory.add item, item manager. The item that we're going to add is item manager.airstrike bow. And with that, we are done with our commands class. Now, the next thing that we have to do is head back into our main class to register the command there. So what we could do is just type get command and then in the bracket put our speech marks again. Then go back to our command class again and copy the command over here and paste it right in. Remember, whatever we type here must be the exact same thing as whatever we type here. So we are just going to copy and paste that so we do not make any spelling errors. Then we are just going to type .set executor and type new commands. The commands is basically referring to our commands class. And the next thing that we can do is go into our plugin.yml, which is under the resources folder over here, and type commands, colon, paste in the command again, colon again, description, and we are just going to put the description as gives the player an airstrike bow. And put the usage as slash angle bracket command close angle bracket, and with that we are technically done with our command. Now we can move on with the items function. As for our items function, we can just go ahead and create another new Java class, and this time we're just going to name it the name of the item, so airstrike bow it is. And first of all, we are going to implement, that's not how we spell implements listener. And then we can go ahead and move on with our add event handler. So add event handler public void on shoot. Then we are going to listen for an entity shoot bow event and just type event next to it. So first of all, we are going to check. Now this step is kind of optional. So first of all, we're going to check if the shooter of the bow is a player. So we're just going to type if event.getEntity instance of player. Now this step is optional because if you want skeletons to be able to use the airstrike bow as well, you could just ignore this step. And now for next step, we are going to check if they are holding the airstrike bow. So if event.getBow is not null, and event.getBow.getItemMeta is not null, and event.getBow.getItemMeta.getLore is not null, And we're just gonna move down one line just to make things slightly easier to see. Event.get bow dot get item meta dot get lore dot contains. Now in this part, we are just gonna refer back to our airstrike bow that we created in our item manager. So item manager dot airstrike bow dot get item meta dot get lore dot get. And now we are going to go back into item manager and start counting the lines of lore. So for example, we are going to look for a line that is unique to the item, which in this case would be the first line of lore. It's our item ability airstrike, which in this case would be the index number 0 of our list. So we're just going to type 0 there. And the reason why we are running all these null checks is just to make sure that our console does not get spammed with null pointer exceptions, because those won't be good. And then we can just go ahead and check if our projectile that is being shot out is an arrow. So event.get projectile instance of arrow. Then we are going to convert our projectile into an arrow. So arrow goes to bracketed arrow event.get projectile. Then we are going to set the custom name of the arrow. So this is how we are going to determine that that arrow was shot out of an airstrike bow. So arrow.set custom name, and we're just going to put our speech marks inside our brackets, airstrike bow. Then now we are going to move outside of our event handler and create another at event handler, and this time we are going to listen to a projectile hit event. So public void on hit bracketed projectile hit event, and we're just going to put event next to it as well. So first of all, we are going to check if our projectile that was hit is an arrow. So if event.get entity instance of arrow, then we are also going to convert that entity into our arrow. So arrow equals to bracketed arrow event.get entity. Then the next thing that we're going to check is that if our arrow was the arrow that was being shot out of our airstrike bow. So we're going to compare the custom name of the arrow. So if arrow.get custom name is not null, again, just to make sure that there are no null pointer exceptions, and arrow.get custom name dot equals to airstrike bow. That's not how we spell air. Airstrike bow, and there we go. And then now we are gonna get the location of where the arrow hit. So location. So we're just gonna name this hit location equals to arrow.get location. Then now we are going to loop through. This is basically the part where we warn all nearby players that there's going to be an airstrike. So we're going to loop through all the players that are nearby. And in order to do that, we're going to create an enhanced for loop first. We're going to loop through all the nearby entities first. So entity colon arrow.get nearby entities, and we're just going to type 555. So we're going to get all the entities within a 5 block radius of the arrow. Then we are going to check if the entity is a player. So if entity instance of player, then we are going to convert the entity into a player in order to send them the warning message. Player entity. Then we are going to send them the message now. So player.send title. And over here we are just going to type chat color dot red, because we want red stands for warning. So we're just going to type that in, plus the message that we want to send right in the middle with the big text first, which is basically our title, airstrike incoming, and we're just going to put an exclamation mark there, comma. Now we are going to move on to our subtitle, which is the smaller text below our title, chat color dot dark red this time, just to make things slightly of more variety, plus just stand right there. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. comma, we are going to put the number of ticks that the title screen is going to fade in. So we are going to put it as 10 ticks first, then we are going to put the number of ticks. Our title screen will stay on the screen. So you want to stay for 3 seconds, so 60 it is. Basically 10 means half a second, 60 means 3 seconds because there are 20 ticks in a second, just a quick note. Then we're also going to put the fade out time of the title screen as half a second, which is 10 ticks as well. Then now we are going to play our players a sound. So player.play sound, we are going to play it at their location. So player.get location, and we are going to put the sound as sound.entity TNT primed. So this is the sound when a player ignites a TNT, when something ignites a TNT. So explosion TNT kind of interrelated. So we're just gonna put that, and we're gonna put the volume and pitch as 5 for both of them. Then we're gonna exit our enhanced for loop over here because we've done doing all the title things and warning them. Now we are gonna create another for loop, just that this time it's not enhanced for loop. So for int I equals to 0, basically what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start spawning in our airstrike arrows. A semicolon, I is less than 10. The 10 is basically referring to how many airstrikes or arrows you want to spawn in. So you can change this number depending to whatever amount of airstrikes you want to create, and we're just going to put I++. Then over here, we are going to spawn in our arrows. So arrow, we're just going to name this airstrike arrow equals to arrow dot get world dot spawn hit. We are going to spawn it at the hit location dot clone. Remember, we need to clone it before we add any coordinates to it, because if we do not clone it, whatever location, this location here will start to change and it will not be the same for the next time we spawn in the arrow as well. We need to clone it. Dot add. And over here, we are going to, first of all, we need to create a random. I'm going to go outside here to create a random. First, random r equals to a new random. Then we can move back here and just type r dot next int. And in our brackets, we can just type 5 plus 5. Then we can move out of that bracket minus 5. And we're just going to put comma here. So now we are just going to go through what the entire thing this is. So basically how this thing works is that next in will generate a random number that's below this number, but it won't be negative. So in this case, we want it to minus 5 in terms of our coordinates as well, because we want the arrow to be spawned behind as well as in front. So what we need to do is it goes something like that: the maximum minus the minimum plus the minimum. So in this case, our maximum is 5 blocks. So the maximum we can go is adding 5 blocks from our arrow's location, and then the minimum we can go is minus 5 blocks from our arrow's location. So in this case, it's maximum minus our minimum, which in this case would be 5 minus negative 5, so it's 5 plus 5. And then over here would be plus our minimum, which would be plus negative 5, which would be the same thing as minus 5. So that's how it works. And then we're going to add 100 on the y-axis so that it spawns way up and we won't see it coming down. And then we will come here and do the exact same thing that we did for our x coordinates, because we want to go forward and back as well as left and right. So we are going to do r.nextInt, then put a maximum as 5 again, plus 5, which is basically minus negative 5, minus 5, which is basically plus negative 5. Then the next thing we can do is exit our brackets and come here, just put arrow dot class and put our semicolon, which is extremely important. Then the next thing we can do, similar to what we did here, we are going to name the arrow so that we know that that is the arrow that came from the airstrike. So arrow, that's not what we're supposed to do. Airstrike arrow dot set custom name as our airstrike arrow, and then we are going to set the shooter of the arrow. So airstrike arrow dot set shooter as arrow dot get shooter. And the reason why we are doing this is because if our airstrike arrow actually kills something before the explosion happens, we want to credit our player that shot the airstrike arrow out first. Then after that, we can move outside of this entire block of code here and outside of this if statement over here and create an else if. So else if arrow dot get custom name is not null again. So we're gonna null check again. That's not the correct thing to type. It's not null, and arrow dot get custom name dot equals to our speech marks again airstrike arrow. So now this time we are going to check if the arrow that hit is our arrow that was shot from the airstrike. Then if both of them are true, we are going to create the explosion. Now we are not just going to create the explosion like world.create explosion, because we won't be able to customize the damage together with the blast radius and other things. However, what we could do is mimic the explosion so that we can customize it however we want. So to do that, we are first going to spawn in the explosion particles. So arrow.getWorld.spawn particle, and the particle would be particle.explosion huge. That's not the correct one. We are not going to spawn in enchanting table particles. That would be funny, but no. And then we are just going to spawn it at the arrow's location. So arrow get location, comma, we are going to put the count as 10. Then we are going to play an explosion sound. Arrow.getWorld.play sound, and we are going to play it at the arrow's location again. So arrow.get, that's not a dot, dot get location, comma, sound.entity entity generic explode. There we go. Comma, put the volume and pitch as 5 and 5 as well. And then now we are going to start damaging the people that stood too close. So in order to do that, we are going to create another enhanced for loop. So enhanced for loop for entity semicolon, colon, not semicolon, arrow.get nearby entities, and we are going to get it at a 3-block radius. So this will get all the entities within 3 blocks of the arrow. And then first of all, we're going to check if that entity is a living entity or not. So if entity instance of living entity, and the reason why we are doing this is because entities include things such as minecarts and boats that do not have health. And we do not want to damage those. So we are going to check if they are a living entity first. So if and we are also going to check if our entity was not the shooter of our airstrike arrow. So if entity is not arrow.getShooter, then we are going to convert our entity into a living entity. So living entity equals to bracketed living entity. Then after that, we are going to damage them. So living entity dot damage. We're just going to set the damage as 10. You can increase or decrease this however much you want. And then we are going to put comma bracketed entity. And then we are going to put our arrow dot get shooter, and we do not need to run another check if our arrow dot get shooter is an entity, because we've already checked if they are a player before, and a player is considered an entity. Then after that, we can just go outside of our enhanced for loop and just type arrow.remove. And the reason why we are doing this is because we do not want players to duplicate arrows, and we just want to remove the arrow so that they can't get at the arrow. Anyways, that's basically our items function done. Now all we have to do is just go back into our main class and register the event. So we can just type get server.get plugin manager.register events, new airstrike bow, comma this, and with that we are done with the coding part. Now all we have to do is just build the artifacts, and I'll see you in the test server. Alright, so we are back in our test server, and if we just go ahead and run the command give airstrike bow, it will give us that bow. And if we let's just go ahead and summon rabbits. That's not how we spell rabbit. And let's just summon in a few more and just shoot an arrow here. See that the airstrike incoming, then right there comes out. And yeah, so it does shoot. Let's just go ahead and just shoot one more arrow. Then let's just wait. Yeah, so that's the item done, I guess. So that's it for today's video, I guess. If you did enjoy today's video, please leave a like and subscribe. You'll be greatly appreciated. And if you do have any other ideas for future tutorials or plugins, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. And with that all said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you when I see you in the next video. Bye!